Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh yeah, how you doing? Welcome to the show. I'm trying to figure out what to wade into first here. There's, as usual, so much. Good God. May 3rd. Oh, it feels like March 3rd. May 3rd it is. My God, I saw there was something like 2 feet of snow in northern Michigan. Also in parts of West Virginia, huge amounts of snow. So, odd. It's odd. I don't know. I was going to start with, I'm not going to. You know what I'm starting with? Here's what I'm going to start with, because it's easier. I've been meaning to give this guy his due for about 2 days now. He's dead. That's why. So I'm starting with the obituary for Gordon Lightfoot, who was just somebody I loved. I mean, I just love this guy's music. I don't know if that makes me an old fart or whatever. I suspect a lot of people don't know his music now. Is that possible? Even though the obituary says that Gordon Lightfoot was held in high esteem by others who are considered to be iconic, like Bob Dylan. There's a quote of Dylan's who said, "I can't think of any Gordon Lightfoot song I don't like. Every time I hear a song of his, it's like I wish it would last forever." Yeah, I feel that way too. And one of the weird things is one of the songs that became most popular that Gordon Lightfoot did was a song that did, according to, radio stations, did go on forever, because stations that played, pop hits generally don't want a song going on for, I don't know, what is it, 2.5 minutes or so? And yet, I believe the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I mean, what are the odds that I think it was over 6 minutes long, and it just told the story of a ship wreck. One would not think that would capture the ears and or attention of so many Americans, but it did. I think I can still sing whole parts of it. Has to be one of the few. I mean, Gitche Gumi is mentioned in there. Did you know that that's what the native people called Lake Superior? And according to the obit, Gordon Lightfoot's absolute attention to detail in telling the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald is amazing. There's not a false statement in it. He really tells the story of how a ship went down, costing the lives of 29 crew members. And the fact that this wasn't an old story, it was a contemporaneous story. It happened, that ship, the Edmund Fitzgerald, left port in Superior, Wisconsin in November of 1975, and ended up in a horrific Great Lakes snowstorm with winds up to 65 miles per hour, waves over 25 feet. And it took that boat down, that ship down. And it was one of the largest freighters on the Great Lakes, the Edmund Fitzgerald. Wow. I love that song. Says here that Lightfoot was not into being a celebrity. He avoided interviews. I mean, I can't think of ever seeing him interviewed, in fact. In Canada, where he lived, born, raised, stayed, he's considered a national hero. His songs are just wonderful. And like Dylan, I will say, the fact that Dylan said it makes me feel much more comfortable saying, I just loved, and still do, his music. I mean, so many others have covered his songs. Sure, they say here. I don't know. Well, Dylan covered his song, "Early Morning Rain," for one. If you could read my mind. I mean, what? Oh man. Okay, I won't, because I think I'll start singing. Big lake they call Gitche Goody. Never gives up its dead. Okay, I'll stop. But that was an odd, I mean, in American musical history, that is one very odd popular song to have done what it did. By virtue of its length, by virtue of its subject matter. It wasn't boy meets girl, boy leaves girl, whatever. About a shipwreck. A very real shipwreck. Okay. Well, that's Gordon Lightfoot. He was 84, by the way. So one of the things I saw, and I'm very happy to have seen, is they have finally in Texas caught the son of a bitch who killed those truly innocent young people, including a 9-year-old. And this is a guy they said was probably even out of the country by now in Mexico. They found him nearby, hiding under laundry in a closet in a relative's home. So I ask you, why did it take so long? I don't understand that. Well, who cares? The thing is that I want to say is that it's the name of the town they caught him in. I did a double take because I thought, what? I mean, there's odd place names, obviously. Truth or Consequences, that's a town. But this one I never heard of, and I'm not quite sure what it refers to. But he was found hiding in a closet under dirty clothes in Cut and Shoot, Texas. 3 words. Cut and Shoot, Texas. The very fact that there's the word shoot in it and Texas, that all seems right. But Cut and Shoot, Texas. What do you think the derivation of that place name is? Anyway, it's a perfect place name to have found him. Shoot. Texas. And I was reading, I have to tell you, it's hard to take. There were so many stories of mass murder in the news today. Do we even see them? I can't even remember the place. Some guy mowing down a family, 3 kids or 4 kids and his wife, another one and then in Serbia, was it Serbia? Some kid walked into his school and started mowing down people. America has exported this horror. I doubt that kid ever would have considered doing it. But in America, it's just, it's what you do. And then there's the finding of all of these bodies they're looking for 2 other girls. Is this in Oklahoma? and they find 7 bodies, all shot in the head. Young women. Okay. I mean, the guy who, it's on the property of a guy who was a registered sex offender who was due for yet another trial, I guess, to which he did not show up. And I'm wondering, wait a minute. You're already a convicted sex offender. You have been charged with more sexual related crimes, child pornography, blah, 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 blah. What are you doing why aren't you in jail awaiting trial? Every time I drive by the Allegheny County Jail, my heart just breaks for the people in there, most of whom have been convicted of nothing. They're there because they've been charged. This guy was charged, but he was able to be home and, killing another 7 people. I don't understand anything anymore. Don't understand it. Hey, I heard that this is totally change of subject, some Pennsylvania lawmaker, who she is, never heard of her before, but God bless her. She's introduced a bill that would make it illegal in Pennsylvania. This doesn't have a chance in this state. A bill that would prohibit the sale of several popular fireworks. Oh, God, I wish. Yeah. Her bill would prohibit Class C fireworks and increase the fines for those who violate the law. And that Class C includes, firecrackers, Roman candles, bottle rockets, anything containing a maximum of 50 milligrams of explosive material. What is it with people that they love the sound of explosion? What is the thrill of essentially all like gunpowder, essentially? What is that about? And is it too, and I suspect it is, a male thing? I bet. And I so hate. I came from a state where you couldn't get fireworks. They weren't allowed to be sold. I was shocked when I came here and saw how everybody had them. Anyway, I hate them because they terrify animals. And we screw up animals' lives enough. And I also hate them because I don't like listening to them. I mean, in a country so besieged by wanton gun violence that people would choose to celebrate something by exploding things by that same sound, because every time if you hear fireworks starting to go off, I mean, the first thing any American would think is that gunfire. I wish we could just do away with it all. So, patience up to the cam. I guess everybody has a story. I've got a Washington Post story in front of me about how one of these texts that had been redacted in the testimony, in the discovery, in the defamation trial. Fox News, the one they settled. But this is in an effort to understand why Tucker Carlson got axed. And it became clear that some of the texts that we had not seen were at the heart of it, that he was increasingly worrying the powers that be at Fox with his verbiage, written and oral. But when I read this redacted one that supposedly shows why they got to the point where they axed their number one talent, I read it and then I couldn't even figure out why is that any worse than everything he has said right out in front in the open. I don't even. I mean, it's awful, but I don't understand how it's worse. Have you seen it? It's worse than what he would say on any given night on. And in fact, there was even a part where he almost sounded human for a second. I just. So this was sent the day after January 6th. He's, I guess, emoting to, I don't know, a friend, a producer, I think a producer. And he's talking about video of this mob beating up a kid, just pummeling some poor soul on the ground. And Tucker immediately decides that the mob, his people, are beating up on the kid because the kid must be Antifa, because Antifa, as you know, is really at the heart of January 6th. So he writes this: I really wanted them to hurt the kid. I could taste it. What? Yeah. So that's what. But then there was something where he said he was bothered by the fact that the mob had jumped the kid. He also said something to the effect of, that's not the way white men fight. Jumping a guy like that is dishonorable. Obviously. It's not how white men fight. Wow. Well, yeah. So this is news that the guy is a racist. And it begs the question of, how does Tucker Carlson think white men fight? He thinks they don't ever ambush somebody. He doesn't think they're dishonorable. How do white guys fight? I'm thinking, well, the KKK, a bunch of white guys, how'd they fight? They hid their identities and terrorized unarmed people. How did they fight? They hung people from trees. How do white men fight? That's not how white men fight. So, according to this article, when the folks at Fox were seeing this message, they alerted executives and the board. And they were concerned that I don't understand what it is that they're concerned about. It says Rupert Murdoch had grown concerned about Carlson's increasingly far-right commentary. What? I'm speechless. I'm speechless. What do they call? Okay. I don't know. They were worried that if he got called, they settled probably because they were most afraid of Carlson being called to the stand and what he might say. They were worried about how his texts and whatever he would say might play in front of a jury. But again, I ask you, what? They didn't freak out when he called. I don't even want to get into the despicable things he has said, and I'm sure I don't even know half of them. He's just an out and out racist, a xenophobe. He's a friggin' fascist. And all of a sudden, something he said about really enjoying seeing Antifa, an Antifa kid being beaten bloody, that somehow, if anyone can help me with that, feel free, because I seriously don't understand it. Don't you tell me that my account is unavailable, asshole. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Such a mouse. I'm really sorry. Okay. Ray writes regarding to the kids shooting up the school in Serbia. I think suggesting America exported violence, mass shooting, or wanted violence to Serbia is a bit of a stretch. That was only 20 years ago. They committed some of the worst massacres and war crimes in our lifetime. Yeah, but that wasn't this particular American hobby of shooting up children in schools. I don't think that was Serbian, was it? I know they did some terrible, terrible things, but all I'm saying is that's a very American thing that's very in the news these days. I'm sure that kid was, doing what all those Americans are doing. I'm sticking with it. I know it's that Serbians have a capacity for violence. Humans have a capacity for violence. Men mostly have a capacity for violence. You end up naming a town Cut and Shoot. Oh, God. So I'm not sure I want to go here because I've gone here so many times before, but it has to do again with the potential destruction that will be wrought soon, relatively soon, by artificial intelligence. And, I've been freaked about this, but for the last 25 years. Sort of pushing against all this tech because I just knew it was going to end in some dystopian horror. It's why I always loved the fact that my young son, I've told you this a million times, but he said it. Mom, you're lucky. You're never going to have to live under robot overlords. He assumed he would. Couldn't have been more than 8 when he said it. And I sort of thought he was right. But now I'm thinking, as old as I am, I even might live under robot overlords because this is happening faster than even the tech geniuses thought it would. And I now have, the fact that now the people that are sounding the alarm are the very people who brought this horror to us makes me absolutely certain that we are heading into a nightmare. I'm just saying. The latest is a guy named Jeffrey Hinton. You don't have to know the name, but anyone in AI knows the name. He's practically the father of it. It was in 2012 that he created the technology that became the foundation of artificial intelligence. Up until just a week or so ago, I believe, he was still working at Google, one of the most respected people in the field, an older gent at 75. And he told his bosses at Google, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit because I feel a need to warn people. And obviously I can't do it while being part of what I'm warning against. "75 years old. Let me tell you, when you're 75 years old, you do start looking back. You assess your life, your work, the trail you've left. Some of it you take pleasure in. Some of it you're ashamed of. But it's hard not to, as you near the end, engage in that kind of self-assessment. At least, I suppose, I just think it goes. I'm just saying. All of a sudden, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting my thought because I'm thinking, well, hey, Cullen, just because you do that doesn't mean everybody else does. So I don't know that with age, people, of course, do that. But I don't know. It seems that that is what naturally anybody would do. It's what he did. Jeffrey Hinton. And he's scared. He's scared. And his regret, any regrets I have, believe me, pale beside his regret, because he fears he's unleashed. He was party to unleashing what he thinks could destroy humanity. He says this is a quote, "I console myself with the normal excuse." You see, he is really beating himself up. "I console myself with the normal excuse. If I hadn't done it, somebody else would have." Well, you can be assured he gets no consolation from that. He's right. Somebody else would have, but he did it. I mean, just so you understand, this is a good guy who was just fascinated by computers. He's, not surprisingly, he spent time here in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon in the 80s. He was in the computer science department, professor there. And do you know why he left CMU? He left CMU because it seemed all of the money that was funding all of the research that CMU was doing, all that money was coming from the Pentagon. And he was uncomfortable that his hungry mind was somehow being used to help create potentially weapons of mass destruction. That's not what he was interested in tech doing. He was looking at all the extraordinary positives, helping humanity, breakthroughs in medicine, and just helping people live their lives, all the kinds of things it could do. But who was funding it? The guys whose business it is to kill. So because, and he remains deeply opposed to the use of artificial intelligence on the battlefield, he left. He left CMU and ended up in Canada. Now, make no mistake, this guy, he continued his work. In 2018, he won the Turing Award, which is considered the Nobel Prize of computing. And then last year, he's at Google now. So then last year, as Google and others were building these systems, AI systems, his view changed. Just last year, he still thought that the systems, the artificial systems, were inferior to the human brain in some ways, but he thought they were eclipsing human intelligence in others. He began to wonder, maybe what's going on in these systems we've created is actually a lot better, more nimble than what is going on in our brains. And he began to feel, as these systems are improved, and they're being improved every day, he believes that they become increasingly dangerous. He says, look at how it was 5 years ago and how it is now. Take the difference. Propagate it forwards. That's scary. Okay, so here's a guy. He's scared. He's scared. He is worried that future versions of the technology pose a true threat to humanity. That's us. A true threat to humanity because, and here's why, and he understands this stuff, because they often learn, listen to this, those systems often learn unexpected behavior from the vast amounts of data that they take in and analyze. And as companies and other scientists allow these systems, and they do, not only to generate their own code, but actually run that code on their own, he fears that, well, you name your particular nightmare vision, but he says killer robots, not under our influence, certainly a possibility. Here's a quote from Jeffrey Hinton. The idea that this stuff could actually get smarter than people, a few of us believe that. But most people thought it was way off. And I thought it was way off. I thought it was 30 to 50 years or even longer away. I no longer think that. And if you ask this guy, well, what the hell do we do? He doesn't know. He doesn't know because what is happening right now is a global race among scientists that is not going to stop. There's too much money. And he says the only possibility is that governments will stop it. But look at governments. You think they're going to stop it? No. Not only aren't they going to stop it, they can't do a damn thing. They can't even name a post office in this government anymore. And anyway, he says, how can a government stop it? It's not like stopping nuclear weapons testing because there's no way of knowing whether a company or a person is working on this technology in their basement. The only hope is that the world's leading scientists, and this isn't a way to stop it necessarily either, would collaborate on a way of controlling the technology. And he says, I don't think they should scale this up anymore until they understand whether they can control it. And here's the thing, they can't control it. He knows they can't control it. And they're just going to keep scaling it up. Another quote from him, and this is the reality that has always made me so frightened. We now know, all the promise of computers when they came out and all this stuff that we have gotten comfortable with, it didn't exist 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and which we can't even imagine living without. And all the wondrous things that would happen as a result. Yeah, a lot of wondrous things have happened. But what about the bad guys? And we know there's lots of them. What about the bad guys using this tool? And Hinton says it is hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using this for bad things. This is all coming from a guy who has often been called the godfather of artificial intelligence. And I have to tell you, a picture of him that I'm looking at, he does not look happy. He looks sick to his stomach. And this is a man much admired, awarded, rewarded, who now regrets his life's work. I know I keep on coming at you with this, and I'm sorry, but I can see what's coming. And if you ain't terrified, you are not paying attention, or you're just in total denial because it's too horrific to imagine. I don't know how old you are, but maybe you won't have to live under robot overlords. And maybe the robot overlords will decide we're too much trouble to have around. I can see where they'd think that. I'm just saying. And we think we're so smart. And it's the smarty pants. It's these smart genius types that have brought us to this point. God. I came upon this the other day. I didn't even read it. It said, this was in the New York Times, artificial intelligence is getting better at mind reading. Oh yeah, they've done experiments and where computers actually figure out what you were thinking. I mean, now here on the good side, this kind of technology has already developed instruments that help paralyzed people write just by thinking of the words they want to write. I mean, it's amazing. Amazing. Thinking of a Gordon Lightfoot lyric. If you could read my mind, what a tale my thoughts would tell. And it could be that our minds will be read. And if our minds are read, we're toast. And so these scientists are so excited about this. They're at the University of Texas in Austin. And they're saying, we're getting at meaning. Something about the idea of what's happening, and the fact that that's possible is very exciting. They're using MRA scans while people are being told to look at certain pictures. They're training the computers to see what happens when people, I don't know. I don't understand it. But, you know, where I would say, why stop this? I can see where someone would say, like a neuroscientist, look, this could help so many people. You know, our brain activity is like an encrypted signal, and language models provide ways to decipher it. I don't know. I tried to understand what the hell they were doing, and I couldn't. But good God in heaven. I have a caller. Hello there.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Oh, hey, I agree with you on all that, what you were saying, but I think we got so much on our plate. We'll probably either blow each other up, some odd virus will get us all, or, like you say, global warming is going to starve us all out, or water, or I don't know. We got so much. I think, to me, that's the one that's on the bottom of my list.
Okay, well, so it's like a race. It's like a race is what's going to kill us first.
But I'm starting to get, and I shouldn't even be this way. I'm starting to worry about this election now. I don't know. I usually not like it. I hope it ain't a bad omen.
Which election? You mean 24?
Yeah. When I see Biden out there, I'm like, oh, man. Why don't you just step down, man?
Well,
jeez.
We know that he can beat Donald Trump, and it looks like Trump's going to be the
yeah, that's true.
The nominee.
And I didn't have this abortion issue on our plate and all this other stuff. I think
but we do.
That's the wind to our backs, I guess. So that's preventing good.
Okay. Well, you know, there's Here's the good news. If you like to worry, there's no end of things to worry about.
Yeah, I'm not worrying, but I'll probably get in a better mood about it later, maybe. I just read too much on that stupid internet.
I understand. Well, we all do, and we should probably stop.
The only thing I'm having joy is that he's beating DeSantis, and that makes me laugh. I can't.
What? I'm sorry?
DeSantis, he's beating him.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy, I mean, I really can't stomach. I think I hate him worse than Trump. I don't like him. He is like, because he's a young version of him, you know. Damn.
Yeah. I hear you.
Hey, you notice I haven't called your show for a while?
Yeah, I have. When hearing your voice now, yes.
Because I can't take talking about it anymore. I'm sick of it. I really am.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, you understand. You got to put on the whole time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I gotcha.
Okay. All right,
good to hear from you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, gosh. Chris writes, every time I hear the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, I can't help but think of Doug Hurst. Oh, that's right. He would recite the Lord's Prayer using that. How would he do it? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our day. I don't know what he would do. I ain't Doug. But Chris says, God, I miss his humor. Yeah. Well, he was unique. He was a oner. O-N-E-R. Ain't no other. I suppose that's true of all of us, but he was a little more out there than most. So apparently the mayor has announced a new police chief, and it isn't that guy who killed or practically broke the neck of one of his deputies that we had been told was going to get hired. It's a guy who was a cop here for many years, and then went down to Fort Lauderdale and was told to diversify the department as the police chief there. He did it, or tried to, and they fired him. A bunch of white officers brought. I remember sharing the story with you because it was so outrageous. You know, you're asked to do a job, and so you do it, and my God, all hell breaks loose. And they fire you for doing the job that they hired you to do. Anyway, that guy is apparently, with the approval of the city council, going to be the new police chief. And his name, I am not sure how to pronounce it, Shirota, whatever. So there's that. And I was going to talk about some trans stuff today, but I'm not. Don't have the energy at the moment. But it's something that, ain't going away because it's the hot issue. As Republicans desperately try to back away from the abortion issue, which was their issue to get their base excited, they have settled on trans issue, which has created a situation that I don't think most of us know how to talk about it, what to say. I mean, people jump down your throat the minute you say anything. The divide is so huge. The extremes are there's no way they come together. And I suspect most Americans in the middle, as usual. And I do want to talk about that some because of some things that I've read recently as I try to come to terms with how to think about it, how to talk about it. It's something we're all just learning about together in many whatever. But meanwhile, I found something else that we can it's about I thought growing up when I did, and was part of the 60s counterculture. I mean, everybody sort of thought that whole drugged out era was, that was my generation's. That's what we did. That was our contribution. And it turns out that that's not true at all. That, of course, human beings have been trying to alter their consciousnesses and celebrating that ability for forever. And there's a book out written by a cultural historian who's generally thought to be the go-to guy for any talk about drug usage in a cultural context. His name is Michael J. And he's written a book called Psychonauts and Astronauts, Psychonauts, Drugs and the Making of the Modern Mind. And in it, he mostly is talking about the drug culture from the 16th century up until the 50s, when my generation thinks we discovered it. And there's just some fascinating things in here. And as somebody who has experimented with lots of drugs and who doesn't have this immediate sense of condemnation about their use, I would like to share some of this with you. For one thing, it turns out that, Robert Louis Stevenson's book, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and in that book, it's a mysterious white powder that prompts this monstrous transformation of Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde. The year before Stevenson published that book, an American neurologist named William Hammond, doing research on cocaine by self-injecting himself. That's the thing. They thought the only way to figure out what these drugs did was to do it to themselves. That's what science decided, until they decided that was not a good idea. But this guy named William Hammond wrote a paper in which he described injecting himself with a large dose of cocaine and becoming like a monster, coming to, essentially, finding he had trashed his own library. So the sense that Stevenson got the idea of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from somebody who, ingested some white powder. But the book goes back into all of these creative people, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. I mean, these guys were drugged out all the time. Opium was what he was doing all the time. And he dreamt about, he fantasized about something that he called an anti-opium. Something that would make his mind sharp and give him energy. Since the opium, he called it a free agency annihilating poison. And yet, he kept taking it. So he thought of, wouldn't it be great to have another drug that would reverse that? And the book says that Coleridge, opining about this, was not unusual in the drug culture that existed in his time. And this is early 19th century, so 1810, 1820. His pal, Thomas de Quincey, was addicted to opium as well. And he wrote, I'm sure many of you know, an extremely popular autobiography called Confessions of an English Opium Eater. That was published in 1821. So, I mean, go back another century, 1608, the philosopher Francis Bacon took medicines to help his melancholy. Developed a regimen of regular drug taking to manage stress. And mostly their drug use was about just exploring what was happening in their minds when the drugs would take effect. In that regard, that's why the author calls them psychonauts. They were exploring what was possible in their own minds. And he says, even though we tend to associate, this, LSD and all that kind of stuff, this kind of mind exploration with the 60s, this was happening long before then. I mean, it's a fascinating book how these, what these people did. Let me just share a few other things with you. Sorry. One of the things that the people who took all these drugs knew, and frankly, I knew when I took them, is that you don't lose. Sorry, guys, I'm back. For some reason, my call just dropped out. I guess it didn't like the subject. Okay. Anyway. Freud got really into, experimentation with drugs. His go-to was Coke. And he was doing experiments with cocaine in the 1880s. And The fact is that Coke, really got into I don't know. Cocaine was soon available in pharmacies. I don't know what to tell you about this, but it wasn't until the fascinating things about this, the idea of these drugs being bad, of even the idea of calling them drugs, didn't really happen until the late 19th century and heading into the 20th century. And gradually, even mild psychoactive drugs were deemed to be bad. They were reconceived. This was not as antisocial. And between 1914 and 1916, that's when these drugs became the bad guys that we have all been taught to think of them. New laws were passed in that 2-year window in the United States, in Britain, and in France to ban or restrict almost all of these drugs. And so when they got sort of rediscovered then in the 50s and 60s, they'd always been there. I don't know. It's another issue on which people can disagree. I think that's it for me. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened with that call, why I dropped out, and I think I'm done. I'm done, and I'll leave. I guess that's what happens when you're done. I'm signing off. Have a good one. Stay warm.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.